Tremendous here. Got another book review here for you. This one is called Where There's Smoke. It's by Kathy Cole. It is a psychological thriller, dark. It's very dark. I'll definitely give it that. A dark psychological thriller which will keep you guessing until the very last page. We'll get to that. I got it on Kindle Unlimited with my subscription. However, you can get it on ebooks for $3.91 and on paperback for $18.26. It is 360 pages ish long, and it was published March 12th, 2019. Mrs. Cole, I'm sorry, does have a couple other books, 3 total on Amazon that I'm seeing: Crime After Crime and Rifter's Christmas, something along those lines we'll go with. I haven't read either of those, but if you're interested, check her out. There will be a link in the description. So yeah, you don't have anything to worry about. So for the most part, this book, the author reached out through my email. I don't know if she saw me on Reddit, if she saw me on Facebook, or just caught one of the videos, but she reached out, asked me to read her book and review it, and I was happy to do so. It's basically a story of a woman named Jo. Josephine is what it's short for. And this is the story is based out of England, Europe area. Mrs. Cole is from Northern Ireland, according to her Amazon profile, and so there was a little bit. I'm very very American, ugly American in a lot of ways. So, but. So it's definitely written in a way that is different from what I would normally read, like if an American author were to have written a story like this. However, this was a very well, when it comes to the grammar and stuff like that, and just the flow of the story, it was written very well. This author knows what she's doing when it comes to, wordsmithing. I was very pleased about that. There was a couple of things grammatically that bothered me. I don't know if it's wrong or not, because I know there's going to be a difference between American English and Europe's English and stuff like that, and I'm well aware of that. There were plenty of words I didn't fully understand and I had to look up. Like, I didn't know what a pram was. Apparently it's a stroller. No idea. No idea. Not that that's a bad thing. It didn't ruin the story or anything like that. It just threw me off. But there was also, it was odd, the titles and stuff people got, like Mr., Mrs., stuff like that. There was no period after them. It's total nitpicking, and I'm not upset. It was just, it threw me off a little bit, but there was like no misspellings, no misused words or anything like that. It wasn't too flowery, but it also wasn't monotone. The writing was really tight. The formatting on the ebook is not great. There was like chapter 5 isn't in the same font or color as all the other chapters. Every chapter title is off center a decent amount to the right. I don't know if that had something to do with the ebook translation from manuscript to ebook, or if that was intended by the author. It didn't feel like that. And I believe chapter 43 is there's no page break. It goes at the bottom of the page. Little formatting things like that. Nothing that's going to ruin the book, but it does catch it. And this is supposed to be a full-blown review, so that's kind of where I'm at with this. So anyway, the main character, Jo, you start off, and it kicks off real quick with a horrible murder. The book does. And then after that murder occurs, you're introduced to the killer a little bit, and then after that murder is done, you meet Jo, and Jo has been working as a firefighter in this little town for just under a month now. She's getting to know the guy. She's the only girl on the shop, or in the crew or whatever. I think possibly the only firefighter in the entire fire station. I don't recall hearing about any other women on the fire brigade. I believe the book takes place around the year 2011, 2012. So it's not exactly like super like 2018, 2019, but it's not way back in the day either. So it's relatively, present day, which is forgotten a lot in this book. I got to be honest with you. It gets a little frustrating. Jo was moved to this town, you find out, because she had an issue in one of the bigger towns. I can't remember if it was Bismuth or something like Liz something. It was. I'm sorry, I'm not good with the towns, but she was in a bigger city and got moved to this smaller town because her family was killed, and she was seeing the mo of her family's killers in a lot of the fires she was fighting. This, of course, leads her down a chain of events that eventually puts her back in the path of the killer. They run into each other, and a lot of darkness. I mean, the author really nails the dark inner psyche of a serial killer, especially a sadistic one that believes themselves to be above the law, divine, all the she checks all the boxes. This guy is wow. The problem, in my opinion, with this story is the main character. Joe is self righteous, whiny, stupid, slightly sexist, infuriating pain in the ass. As she's discovering things, like she goes, I'm trying not to spoil it. That's why I'm hesitant because I want to get into this into spoilers. When she starts to put together the like, oh no, I'm seeing the mo of what I believe is a serial killer here, the one that got my family. Instead of saying that to everyone or anything like that, she's like, I saw flowers, I saw paper flowers, and it has to be a mass murderer. Nobody nobody would take that serious. They'd be like, maybe, I mean, she hit her head, she got a lot of smoke inhalation. What they're saying to her in order to explain away to things that there's zero proof of is not crazy. None of these people are saying anything, oh, shut up, little girl, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. But the character alludes a lot, if I was a guy, you'd believe me. And it's just not justified. I'm not saying that sexism isn't real and that it wouldn't be prevalent in a situation like this, but in my opinion, the author does not convey that any of these men are sexist, with the exception of one, and he's just a big buffoon. And it's not like that. He's just a sexist, and you find out later why. I'll get into that in the spoilers, but. That's not the reason that he's a sexist. Not because, oh, shut up, little lady. It's a completely different reason. But she just gets pissy, and she throws temper tantrums, and she gets really angry, and it's all unjustified. There were multiple times where I was reading this book and I screamed at it, why aren't you bringing what you found to the police? Take it to the police. Go to the police. She's not an investigator. She's not a fire scientist. She doesn't investigate the cause of the fire. She is a low-ranking grunt, rank and file firefighter. That's what she is. She's got no investigation training. She's got no real clue what she's doing. And when she has proof that could get the police on her side and push it, she hides it. She keeps it to herself. She only relinquishes it when she absolutely has to. And it's infuriating because people die due to her righteous quest to find her family's killer. I wanted to reach through the book and throttle her multiple times because this story would have been over 100 pages sooner if she had literally done what most people would have done and walked over to the police precinct and said, here's what I got, here's what I'm thinking is happening, please help me. Especially, and this is a minor spoiler, when the killer figures out that she's onto him, he contacts her. Okay? Okay? Think about that one. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and I'm going to get really into it in the spoiler side of it, that it's infuriating. It's infuriating, the ego on this chick that she thinks, and I'm well aware that they don't exist. The author, let me just say right now, I cannot say enough good things about how real these characters feel. There's multiple characters in this story, a lot of characters, and every single one of them have their own unique personality and accents. Oh my God, does the author do a wonderful job conveying that? Like, every single person that you're introduced to is so real, it's hard to remember that they're not real. So I got to give the author that. But the storyline, the mystery, to be perfectly honest with you, and I'm not just trying to stroke my own ego here, I had a pretty good idea who the killer was 37% of the book of my way into the book, and it was verified later on. By 60%, I knew exactly who it was. I was not surprised by the ending for the reasons that the author wanted me to be surprised. So there's that. But there's also a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of different characters in this book, some of which I don't know why they're introduced into the book. They're literally just side quests, side stories that have nothing, that add nothing to the story whatsoever. It's really frustrating. Like, I was curious how they were all going to wrap up and be a part of the story. I understand supporting characters. I understand making the world feel alive, but there's whole chapters dedicated to these characters and their backstories that have no real bearing on the main story, and it's frustrating. It's like, I don't care about any of this. I don't care. They aren't adding to the story. They're not important. Why do I have to learn about this? I mean, for example, her sister shows up literally out of the blue and is just there for a feel good moment that wasn't necessary. There was a million better ways to do what the sister had to do, which was conveying more of the main character's backstory. It just wasn't necessary, and it was this real left field turn that kind of takes you away, takes you out of the mystery, takes you out of the story. There was a lot of fluff, a lot of extra that just did not add to the overall story, and that frustrated me. It was, I don't, like I said, there's like 100 pages of where you could probably just cut right out of there, and it would have been a much tighter story, a much more focused story. Maybe even fleshing out the serial killer a little bit better. It ate at me a lot. All in all, I didn't hate this book, but I really didn't like it. And again, in the spoiler section, I'm going to really get into that. I'm really going to sink my teeth into the reasons why, really explain myself. Because the first 20% or so of this book, I was enjoying it. It's super well written. It's just the plot and the story and the red herrings. Oh my goodness. The worst kinds of tripe. And the main character really began to eat at me. Just her ignorance and her ego and her just her thought pattern and her sexism. It's just like, hey, what? Use some logic, use some simple reasoning here. You didn't believe him. Why would he believe you? And granted, there are times where the author mentions that, but it makes no difference. She's like, yeah, sure, I did the same thing, so I'm really not mad at him, but screw him anyway. I'm pouting. I just shake her. Just, oh. So overall, I'm sorry, I have to give this book 2 out of 5 stars. I just didn't like it, and I'm gonna get into that real big into the spoilers because honestly, I don't want to deter you from reading this book. I would love for you to get this book. It's on ebook format or Kindle Unlimited. It's really cheap. And I would love to have a conversation. I'd love for somebody to tell me I'm wrong or show me what I'm missing or just have a dialogue about it because I don't mind being proven wrong, but it's just the frustration I felt towards the main character and portions of this book. I had to put it down. I literally had to walk away from the story and calm down because I was infuriated by some of the decision-making skills that the main character had. So 2 out of 5 stars. I'm going to go ahead and play a quick ad, and then we're going to get right into the spoilers. I'm probably going to rant a little bit, so buckle up. All right, in case you guys didn't already know, I am a self-published author, which is why I'm so passionate about self-published books. It's available on Amazon.com and paperback, Kindle, and Kindle Unlimited. If you're interested, the link's in the description. I'd really appreciate it. Checked out, left a review. So get ready, spoilers are coming up next, so if you're still here and the music stops, it's your fault. All right, you're still here, so let's get to it. So, like I said, the story starts off dark. Like, the author does not lie to you about that at all. It starts off with our with a serial killer guy literally murdering a family. Just like he drugs them, he knocks them out, he positions them in this loving, embracing way or whatever, because he's a serial killer, so it's fair to assume that he's a lunatic. And as he's knocking these folks out, these parents out, the little girl who's in the other room is like, "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" She's not knocked out. And you find out later it's because she didn't eat or drink what she was supposed to, which had the drugs in it, which, is how he gets them to die later. And he walks in there and basically chloroforms this chick, heartless as hell, and then burns them to the ground. And that's where our main character comes in. She's responding to the fire, and there's a family inside, and she's trying to get to them, and she does not succeed. She gets there just in time to find out that the little she gets into the little girl's bedroom just in time to see her laying in this bed, and she's surrounded by paper flowers. Well, those paper flowers were the same thing she saw when her family died to an arsonist and stuff like that 7 years ago. So that freaks her the hell out. And here's why this freaks her out. And here's one of the plot holes I have with this story. She had just transferred to this town that she's in, this small little town in like the one of the coasts of some European country. I don't know if it's Ireland. I don't know if it's Europe. I'm not familiar with those cities out there, or those even where those countries. I have a very vague idea where they're at because I am an ugly American and I apologize. But anyway, she's been moved to this little town because she kept on seeing the MO of what she believed was a serial killer in all the different fires, and she burned a lot of bridges in the major city that she was working out of. So a friend of hers, which is actually a real badass, she arranges a way for Joe, the main character, to move to this small little town to start over, try to get away from seeing her family serial killer everywhere she goes, because nobody believes it's a serial killer. Her family's death was considered an accident. It was ruled an accident, and for good reasons. And I'll get into that in a minute. But you find out later in the book that the serial killer has no idea who Joe is at all. Zero knowledge of who Joe is. But he's been killing in this major city for decades, right? She gets to this small town, and all of a sudden you see, like, she's been there not even a month, and she gets that first glimpse of the paper roses, the MO and everything like that, of this guy's killing spree and stuff. I don't understand what he's doing there. He didn't follow her there. Out of all the little towns, the tiny little towns in the whole friggin', continent of Europe, they just happen to be in the same place. That's thin. That's really thin. And like I said, the killer has no idea who she is or how they're connected or anything like that. But not only that, but the killer turns out to be a firefighter, and it turns out to be her partner. Okay, like, hey, this is a spoiler side, so if you're listening to this is on you, all right? But the killer turns out to be the one friend, the first friend she makes there, this guy named Dave, all right? He's got a wife, he's got a daughter, and he is a super nice guy that everybody likes. He's a natural leader, he's got charisma, he's got intelligence, he's a fast burner, he's getting ready to move on and move to another big city. But what? Because he was already in a big city murdering people with this weird lunatic serial killer thing he's got going on. And it's this huge plot hole on who it is. And I think it was an attempt to be clever, but really it's just lying to the reader, and it's insulting and it's infuriating. Because what happens is Joe, after seeing these paper roses and stuff from that first arson thing she sees after being in that little town or whatever, she takes a whole lot of smoke in, and she gets blown out of the room and bashes her head really bad. And you want to know who pulls her out of that fire? Dave, the serial killer. The guy who wants to kill her, but for some reason doesn't, probably because he's deterred by her plot armor, which is frustrating. But anyway, she ends up... She wakes up and she doesn't say anything right away, understandably, but when she does, she's mad because nobody believes her, and she's like, I saw roses. She was like almost like like some sort of weird cultist thing, and blah blah blah. And I didn't know, I didn't like it, and it freaked me out. But I know what I saw. It was a murder. And she tells her boss and everything like that, and the guys that she's working with, and they're looking at her, and they're like, nobody else saw that. Well, of course, her partner's not going to say anything because he's the one that did it, but still, everyone's looking at her and goes, listen, Joe, you got a lot of smoke inhalation because your oxygen ran out. You bashed your head pretty good. You got messed up. You got hurt. The ambulance actually wanted to take you to the hospital for observation, but everybody, started showing how tough they were, and you decided not to go because I'm sure that's how it would work out. But anyway, so maybe you didn't see what you saw, or maybe you misunderstood. It was really smoky, and it says that in the book. It's super smoky, you can barely see, but just for a moment everything clears out before everything explodes. It's very odd. But instead of being understanding or seeing their side of it or anything of the sort, she gets infuriated. She gets mad. She goes to the fire chief of her little fire station and explains it to him, and the fire chief even blows up at her. Is like, what are you babbling about? What evidence do you have? What proof of this do you have? Show me something, because all the evidence, all the proof says that it was an accidental fire. They died of smoke inhalation. There's no effing way. There's no way that what you're telling me is true, because there's nothing there. And she gets mad. I know what I saw. Okay, fine. I saw something that said you owe me $50. So if I believe you that there's roses there, will you toss me $50? Because if you will, trust me, that number just went to $5,000, because I'm going to bank off your crazy, stupid logic. And she throws this hissy fit, and she literally says it at one point, if I was a man, they'd believe me more. And it's like the author never really actually shows any sexism from the men, with the exception of one guy, this guy named Flanders. He's a big fat idiot. He's a male chauvinist, 100% stereotypical chauvinist. But the reason later on in the book you find out that he's a chauvinist, which I gotta be honest, I think is a little bit of BS, is because he could never have kids of his own, and so he's always resented people that could. Although he didn't know that Joe or had a kid until way later in the book, so he's just a scumbag pervert. He's grabbing his crotch. He's saying all the stereotypical "Hey baby, I got something for you to handle" type of stuff, even though he's got a wife. It's just it's like, all right, I get it. Men are bad, and that's another thing about this book. Men are bad. Really bad. Her husband cheated on her. Her flatmate's husband beats her, cheats on her, threatens their daughter. All the guys that are killed by the serial killer are molesters, alcoholics, abusers, and adulterers. And all the women are victims, weak, afraid, and just beat down. There's a flat. She stays in a flat, which I found out was an apartment complex. And her downstairs neighbor is a 18-year-old girl that's ran away from her husband because he beats her, breaks her ribs, beats her down, all this crap. And later on, when that guy gets killed by the serial killer because it's a small town, she's like regretful that her husband died and all this other stuff. It's really weird. There's an old lady in her apartment complex whose son is kind of negligent, and when a flat eventually burns down because, it was going to happen, her son is taking her. Mom, you can live with us. It's fine. You're great with the kids. And, it'll be her prison where she has to watch the kids for free in order to deal with room and board. It's like, oh my God. Okay, so every guy in Europe is a bad person. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on in Europe. I've never been in Europe, but y'all, dudes, you got to get your stuff together, because according to this book, you're all horrible people. There was almost no men that were great, that were good people in this book at all. They were all drunks, scumbags, beaters, abusers, rapists, child molesters. I mean, it ran the gamut. I was like, golly. And every woman was a victim. Every single one. Oh my goodness, this town, man, small towns are dangerous. If you're a woman, stay the hell out of Europe. So anyway, she's desperately trying to get everybody to understand that the serial killer's there. And of course she's right, but she has no proof and no social or interaction abilities, no networking abilities at all to have a rational discussion about it. She just, nobody believes me, so they're all scumbags. It's like, you're a flippin' idiot, girl. And she is. She's a real idiot. She gets her friend back in the big city to compile all these dead people from all the fires that have happened over the past 15, 20 years and stuff like that. And she really gets some good information back from this lady, right? So the lady is like, she gets in a little bit of trouble for this because now she's on something. There's a pattern. There's a noticeable pattern in all these arsons and stuff like that, even though they've been ruled accidental. She finds the pattern. Doesn't go to the police, doesn't say anything. She's going to figure it out herself. She could take it to the chief. No problem, right? Nope, doesn't happen. The killer starts messing with her a little bit because he's infatuated with her, because he's batshit crazy. And you find out it's because he was abused as a child and yada, yada, yada. He hears voices, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. The author does a wonderful job of constructing a serial killer. The problem is the personality of the serial killer and the personality of Dave, her partner, are so 180 that it's not a personality quirk. This guy isn't like his speaking mannerisms, his voice. He talks to her on the cell phone, and all he does in order to change his voice, it's not like his voice, he's using a thing that changes his voice, like some sort of machine or anything. He goes like this, and she can't figure out who he is. So his speaking mannerisms, his accent, the way he talks, and everything else, she couldn't figure that out. This guy that she's worked with for weeks now, closer to anyone else, she's closer to him than anyone else in this entire town, and trust me, she doesn't have any friends. She couldn't figure out who the damn killer was. And later on in the book, she's in the hospital, and this guy's literally in the room. She's in a big flat room or whatever, where I guess there's a bunch of different beds. This guy is talking to her on the phone, lets her know he can see her. And she starts reaching for the call button, and he's like, "Don't you dare, I'll kill someone else." You idiot, he's gonna kill someone else regardless. Push the button. He's here. The killer is here. And nothing, no. She doesn't do anything. She just talks back and forth with him. He's in a flippin' broom closet down the hall from her where he can see her. Okay, having this conversation. He literally starts crying like a baby at one point, and nobody notices that. This is a crowded hospital. Somebody's going to hear a full-grown flippin' man bawling his eyes out in a broom closet where the flippin' door is cracked open. They're going to hear that. That is the sound you're going to notice. I've been in hospitals. You notice crying, especially when it's coming from a flippin' broom closet. Anyway, we keep going. Fast forward in the book a little bit from after she's got her friend to do the research for her. She gets to the point where the killer calls her. The killer calls her and says, you need to back off, last warning. Oh, and by the way, your boss has great grandkids, but I need to free them. He calls them little birds because that's what all the kids are that he kills. They're little birds, and I need to free them from their pain because he likes to kill people who come from broken families because the kids are hurting, and he wants to take that pain away from them. And he believes God has put him on this planet, given him this divine mission to kill the kids who come from broken families because their parents are hurting them. And he kills the parents because they're bad people. They're bad parents. So it's definitely a good reason. The reason for the serial killer is solid. Unfortunately, at about 37% of the way into the book, the killer gives himself away in such a way that the story should be over. She's talking to him on the phone, and he's like, "Your boss has great grandkids," and stuff like that. Don't you know? Did you hear that his son's wife left him and the kids, and he just moved back in with your boss and everything like that today? I think I'm gonna free them right now. He's doing it to mess with her, but he just gave her information that nobody else has, right? It's a small town, and the guy had just moved in. His son had just moved back in with him, with his boss or whatever, or her boss, like a day prior. So, like, nobody really knew about that except for a handful of people. She flies off the handle because Joe's a friggin' idiot. She flies off the handle and goes tearing ass to her boss house, calls the fire department, doesn't call the police. Does not call the police. She never goes to the cops. And you don't know why. Like, I could totally understand it if her husband, her dead husband, had beaten her and he was a cop or something and she had a mistrust for cops. I could have totally gotten there that, no, she's just so full of herself that she believes that only she can stop this killer. And that's why she goes flying off into trying to stop him and stuff like that. Everywhere, every time this guy taunts her, she falls for it. It's infuriating. Call the cops, you moron. A detective would have shown up and said, okay, give us your phone, and I need you to write down every last thing that you can remember he's talked to you about. What did he say? No matter how menial, no matter how small it was there anything in the background? A detective would have gotten this tidbit of information so fast, the book would have been over in a dozen pages because they would have said, wait, police chief, or I'm sorry, fire chief, who knows that your son or your son's ex-wife left him and the kids, and who knows that your son just moved back into your house with with your grandkids? Give us those names. The police chief the fire chief would have done that because now his family and his grandkids, and he really loves his family and his grandkids. The guy's a good guy. One of the few would have given him that information. They would have taken those people in and figured out real effing quick that the two people that knew, one was an undercover police officer, the other one was the effing killer. Those were the only two people that knew that information. The book is over 37 to 40% of the way in, and there's your story. It's done. It would have been more believable. No, she never says that, never brings it up until way later when she goes, how would I have known that? And he looks at her. He literally looks at her. The author puts it in the book. Well, if you had told me at the time, Joe deserved all the horrible things that happened to her. She is a horrible idiot, and her ego and her stupidity got people hurt and killed. So instead of the book ending at 37 to 40%, we got to go through another 60% of just stupidity. We got to go through, we meet her flatmate, the 18-year-old girl, whatever her name is. She's got a little daughter and everything like that. Her husband beats her ass, and so she ran away from him, understandably. Again, never goes to the cops. Okay, sure, whatever. Got it. Roger. No police. Screw the police. She's hiding out at this flat. The guy finds her, and instead of going to the cops or running or anything like that, or even going to the flipping hospital to get her broken ribs fixed, she just keeps taking it. She lives in fears, constantly crying. Every life is horrible, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, one of the other fire department guys tries to help her out, and she is not worthy. She gets mad at him and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, it has the happy ending, but that's because this author is generous. And when her abusive husband dies, she like mourns him and stuff. It's hard to feel sympathy for this girl because she's an idiot. I mean, she is a blatant idiot. I understand she's a victim of a horrible crime and everything like that, but she's doing nothing to better herself with it. Even when offered help, she would rather still be this guy's punching bag than accept help from a fireman. And apparently in this book, firemen are detectives and Jason Bourne. So I don't know what more she was waiting for. God to show up? But, God's a man, so who knows? It was infuriating, but I don't understand what the point of all that was because it doesn't add anything to the story. Yes, her husband gets killed, her abusive husband gets killed by the serial killer, but it doesn't add anything to the book. For just a little while, they're a little confused, and they think, okay, maybe the corpse is the killer, but it's, maybe 20 pages, and then it's gone. So I just don't understand why that entire storyline was in there. She's got an old lady that's living across from her, and she's got this faulty fireplace, which the killer ends up using to blow up her flat and almost kill everybody. Although he warns her with plenty of time to get out before the whole place blows up, which I don't understand at all either, because the killer was saying that he needed to kill her because she was getting too close. Yet he goes to all the trouble to set up this faulty fireplace in the old woman's apartment to kill them all, but then gives her plenty of warning, literally tells her what he's about to do so she can get everybody out of the apartment. the story could have been over. The flat explodes, everyone's dead, the serial killer goes off to murder most of Europe. The end. I mean, it's just, I don't understand that at all. And again, never tells anyone, never tells the cops anything. Drives me out of my flippin' mind. So, long story short, at the end of the book, surprise, surprise, the guys that you thought were the bad guys were, of course, not the bad guys. One is an undercover cop that was so good at his job, he couldn't figure any of this shit out. And the love interest, which kind of was infuriating because it's this guy named Coop, and 1 minute he's this chiseled, muscular, gorgeous man, and the next minute he's this scrawny, frail, thin dude with bony shoulders. What? Coop, I think, went through a few iterations, but I'm not really sure. Like I said, most of the time he's this super rugged, good-looking dude because, hey, I mean, the love interest isn't going to be some obese, World of Warcraft junkie, right? That's what book reviewers are for. it's gonna be a hunky dude, and but some of the times he's described as this frail, skinny guy who's too thin and blah. It was weird. It was kind of weird, but. You're led to believe that they're the killers, but of course they're not the killers. That's the biggest. You get slapped in the face with that red herring a few times, but it's pretty obvious it's not. Then, of course, they're running around. Joe goes into this fire where she gets blown up by an oxygen tank that the killer was positive was going to kill her, but of course it wasn't. She gets blown out a window, falls 2 stories, gets a bunch of masonry dropped on her, but she gets messed up a little bit. She gets a collarbone broken, and after a few days at the hospital and some morphine, she finds out that no, Coop is a good guy. Of course he is. He's too gorgeous not to be. Although he's made some mistakes, and of course his family was killed by this guy too, by the serial killer. Because again, Europe is a small place apparently. And the other guy that was a scumbag turned out to be an undercover police officer, which was one of the most useless characters in the entire book. So they go about dealing with all this stuff, and of course they figure out after now that the police chief, the fire chief, the firehouse chief, and Joe, and of course the love interest Coop and the undercover police officer, they all show up at the police chief's house, and they go over everything like no detectives have ever brought. Now, maybe Europe does stuff different than America. That is a very good possibility. I've never been to Europe. I don't know how their police force works, but I'm almost 100% sure that when it comes to investigating a serial killer, they don't bring in the fire chief. I could be wrong. Please feel free to correct me in the comment section. I am an ignorant, ugly American. I'll be the first to admit it. But that doesn't seem right to me at all. They would have questioned Joe. They would have questioned the fire department. And then they would have put that stuff together themselves. There's no way in 2011, 2012 that they would have called in fire department personnel to help with an investigation. That just doesn't, that doesn't seem right to me at all. So anyway, of course, all of these egotistical bad men, even though they've all risen to places in power and should know stuff, especially the police chief, no. They're all too stupid to figure it out. Joe figures it out. Turns out that it's her only friend at the police department, or at the fire department, Dave, which was about as obvious as a flare in the middle of the night. She, of course, calls his wife, who had been throwing signals this whole time, although she didn't fully know, of course. Nice lady, she's a victim. And, they go after Joe, who went to kill the person that, at the very beginning of the book, he went and interviewed the lady that lived next door to the people that they killed, where Joe saw the flowers around the bed. That was something that she didn't put together until the very end of the book. Oh, no, there's a witness that could have identified the fire department guy that came to talk to her. Because that's common, right? The fire department people come back to talk to the neighbors a day later after the fire burns down. Because 7? Okay, whatever. But, of course, Dave has to kill the witness because reasons, although it's been weeks or months since that last fire. Now he's got to kill her. But he didn't really want to kill her. He gets there to kill her, and he sees an apparition of his dead sister. of which he killed or set free or whatever you want to call it. And she's like, you don't want to do this. These people aren't bad people. Don't be that guy. You're on a mission from God. And he goes, oh, I see the light. You're absolutely correct. So they get there. They all get there in time. And of course, Dave hadn't killed any of them. Instead, Dave decides that he's got to kill his wife and kid and himself because he's going to get caught. They're on to him now. And everybody knows that it's him. He figures that out. And so he tells his wife to make hot chocolate or something like that, where the poison is, and they do, and you're led to believe that Fran and his daughter Jenny, which is Dave's wife and daughter, are drinking this hot chocolate, and it's poisoned, right? One spoonful should have been enough, but two is going to be more than enough. Dave, big firefighting dude, gets home, grabs the chocolate powder or whatever for the hot chocolate and takes two big spoonfuls of it, which immediately start messing him up, right? Like his legs are real heavy. He's having trouble going up the stairs. Really, really bad. His wife and his daughter are on the couch, all conked out. He thinks they're dead because they drank the hot chocolate, which makes sense because that's what's happened this whole time. Of course, Joe figures this out because nobody else can figure it out. They go flying from the Parsons, which are the family that got drugged, but they don't die. They go flying back over to Dave's house because she figures out through Ex Machina that he's going to kill his family next because they know who he is. I don't know how she puts all that together, but she does. She's, oh my God, Dave's going to kill his family. We got to go right now. And so they go flying back to Dave's house. They get there, and they're quote unquote too late. Dave is dead. She checks the pulse of the little girl. No pulse. The rank and file fire department person, who apparently is Jason Bourne or Jessica Bourne or Joe Bourne. Okay, we'll go with Joe Bourne. Couldn't get a pulse in this little girl's wrist or neck or wherever the hell she checked. Starts doing CPR. CPR doesn't work. You're led to believe that all the family dies. Dave dies, Fran dies, and Jenny Wren dies. And that's why he calls them little birds. Wren, haha, cool, whatever. So you fast forward 12 months. The epilogue of the book happens. Fast forward 12 months, and Dave's dead. They're at Joe's little girl's grave because it's the 8-year anniversary of her death. And of course, you're going to get the Wayne's World happy ending. Of course, Fran and little Jenny didn't die. Little Jenny was sick. She had a stomach bug, and because of that, she couldn't keep down the poison and threw up most of it. Mom, doting on her sick daughter, only took a slight sip of the hot chocolate, just enough for plot and drama, and although it was close, they were able to get him to the hospital in more than enough time in order to save them. It was touch and go, and the doctors were worried, but they survived with no ill effect, because that's how poison works. And but Dave, no, he died. He exploded. There was no bringing him back at all. Joe's with Coop. This little town is their new nest egg. They're both able to put their dead families behind them because that's how that works. And it's happily ever after, ad nauseum. I did not enjoy the book. It was infuriating. This book could have ended 6 different times if she had just gone to the police, or if she had just said what she found in the very beginning, or if she had just paid attention to detail, like she apparently was, like just anything about everything. It literally goes right there. It's him right there. Right there. That's the guy right there. He's the only one that could have known about this, because the other guy that knew about it is an undercover police officer who was there to literally watch the fire department because they were already thinking that there was a serial killer in the fire department. Although it doesn't tell you why. Infuriating, frustrating, difficult. I hate Joe. I really do. 90% of what happens in this book is Joe's fault. I don't care. I'm sorry, it drives me crazy. It's a really long book because there's a lot of side stories that just don't need to be there. Her sister shows up. Her sister shows up to a barbecue out of nowhere, drives from the big city to go and talk to her. You find out, of course, her sister's going through divorce because her husband is a cheating scumbag that molested her kids. And the sister was like, it was rough for me too, and you just ran off because you were dealing with your dead family, but what about my family? And they make up and they're friends and stuff like that. And Joe has money from a life insurance policy that she doesn't want to use, but then she does want to use, and then she doesn't want to use, but she always seems to have enough money. And she sends her sister and their kids to Disney World in Florida, which, don't get me wrong, that's a pretty good deal. Disney World's awesome, but it's just, come on. What purpose did this story pull? What was the reason to bring the sister and their kids in there for? There was no reason for that other than a little bit of drama, and the only plot advancement was her sister let it slip that Joe had a daughter to the other firemen. And when Joe finally told those firemen about that because her sister let the slip, that's when the killer found out who Joe was, figured out who she was. She was the one that got away. He killed her family. He didn't realize that he didn't get her for whatever reason, and that's how Dave found out that Joe was the one, was one of his earlier victims and stuff. Why that was significant, I don't know. He's like, that was the one that got away, but he's supposed to be good at this. He would have known, oh, look, there was 2 dead bodies and 1 survivor. If he had read the newspaper, the obituary would have friggin' said that. But yeah, apparently he needed some sort of exposition from a sister who literally did not serve a purpose, that anything other than they were drunk at a bar and she let slip that she had a daughter named Lucy. Some song comes on where the name Lucy is mentioned. She gets choked up. They're like, what's wrong? I had a daughter named Lucy, because she got drunk. They got drunk all the time. There you go. No need for that sister. No need for that 40 pages of extra dialogue that was not necessary at all to the forward motion of the book, other than extra drama. It was just rough. It was difficult. And while the book was well written, there was a few formatting mistakes and probably just some culture difference when it comes to grammar and punctuation. Not a big deal. Like I said, the chapters were off center. Chapter, I think, 5 is the wrong font and the wrong color compared to the rest of the chapters. And I think chapter 40 something is it's not page broken. It's just at the bottom of the page as opposed to starting a new page. Very nitpicky things that weren't bad. This was a very well edited book overall. It's just, unfortunately, the plot and the mystery part of it was just lacking. And the Wayne's World happy ending, tie it all up in a bow at the end, was unearned, undeserved, and disappointing, to say the least. 2 out of 5 stars. I did not enjoy this book. I didn't hate this book, but I did not enjoy it, so I got to give it 2 out of 5. I'm really sorry. I hate that, but I just couldn't get past the main character, and just the stupidity and the ego. Oh my God. So that's it. That's it for the review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry, but I have to keep it real. I have to keep it integrity. That's what I'm trying to do with this book. I'm trying to be honest with the reviews, 100% truthful. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I know it's harsh. I know how difficult it is to write a novel, and the author, her grasp of the English language and writing is wonderful. It's just, for this particular book, it didn't do it for me. But feel free to get the book, read it, and come back and tell me that I was wrong, or tell me I was right, or tell me that I was somewhere in between. I would love to have that dialogue. I would love to have that conversation. Happily, any day of the week, feel free to contact me. As always, though, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints about the review, feel free to put them in the comment section below, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. And as always, thanks.